Over the past 2 days, I've been trying to find the most obscure and interesting things about the iPhone 13 that Apple has not mentioned at the event. These are things you're probably not aware of, and I managed to find not 1, not 5, but 25 of them. This video is sponsored by Clean My Mac X. So for the past week, my M1 MacBook Pro has been dreadfully slow, likely because I had a ton of third-party apps which were taking up almost the entirety of my RAM and storage space. But with Clean My Mac X, I was able to just press a button and instantly clear out app caches, run maintenance scripts, repair disk permissions, and even disable apps that would automatically launch when my Mac booted, all to speed up my system. Try Clean My Mac X for yourselves by using the link below. Okay, so you'll probably know that the notch on the iPhone 13s is 20% smaller now. But did you also know that it is now taller as well? Not by a ton, but the difference is indeed there. Unfortunately, it looks like you will still not be able to see the battery percentage despite this extra space. And just by looking at the press image, the icons look to be the same size too. So aside from just more screen space, Apple doesn't seem to be taking full advantage of the smaller notch. Now, Apple mentioned that all the iPhones get either a 1.5 hour or a 2.5 hour better battery life than the iPhone 12s, but I had to look at some numbers, and the story is quite different, in a good way. For example, the 13 mini offers 3 more hours of video streaming and 5 more hours of audio streaming. The 13 offers 4 more hours of video streaming and 10 more hours of audio streaming, with the Pros getting an even bigger improvement. The 13 Pro offers 9 more hours of video streaming compared to the 12 Pro, and 10 more hours of audio streaming. That's pretty insane, especially on the video streaming side. And the 13 Pro Max offers 13 more hours of video streaming compared to the 12 Pro Max, and 15 more hours of audio streaming. So yeah, battery life does indeed seem to be a major improvement this year. Not only that, but as opposed to last year when the 12 and the 12 Pro had the exact same battery life, this year the 13 Pro has a larger L-shaped battery and offers 5 more hours of video streaming, likely thanks to the more efficient A15 processor. Speaking of which, Apple hasn't actually compared it with its previous iterations like they've always done in the past, but instead they compared it against the competition. And in fact, they were so vague that they couldn't even give us an exact Snapdragon model, which makes me believe that the upgrade from the A14 to the A15 is one of the smallest that we ever got. And did you know that this is the first time in iPhone history when we have 2 versions of the same iPhone chip? For example, on the iPhone 13s, the A15 has a 4-core GPU, while on the iPhone 13 Pros, it has a 5-core GPU. Now, I do believe this to be a direct result of the ongoing global chip shortage, where in the past, Apple would have disregarded faulty chips, but now they've decided to simply repurpose them with 1 GPU core disabled. Now, in case you're wondering about some actual numbers, we do have some leaked benchmarks. CPU-wise, the A15 seems to be about 10% faster in terms of the single-core performance, and 18% faster in terms of the multi-core over the A14. Indeed, a fairly small change, reason why Apple likely decided to glance over it. GPU-wise, it is a bit of a different story. The A15 GPU inside the Pro models is 55% faster than the A14, while the GPU inside the non-Pro models is 15% faster. So there is a pretty significant difference, it seems, between the 4-core and the 5-core GPU performance. But keep in mind that these are just benchmarks, not real-world usage. If you're planning to upgrade just because of the A15, just don't do it. The A14 was already really fast. And we now know the exact amount of RAM inside these iPhones thanks to that leaked Geekbench score. So the 13 Pros have 6 GB of RAM, just like the 12 Pros, while the 13s have, unfortunately, 4, just like the 12s. RAM management has been a real issue for me on my 12 Pro, so I'm actually surprised to see that Apple hasn't included more RAM. We'll have to test and see if RAM management is still an issue, or if maybe the Apple A15 handles it better. And ProRes, the hardware-accelerated ability to record video at a much higher bitrate on the Pro models, which preserves more quality and allows for more editing flexibility, it does indeed have some limitations. For example, if you have a 128GB baseline iPhone 13 Pro, you can only record ProRes in 1080p 30 as opposed to 4K 30 on the higher-end models. I believe that this is because of the 128GB flash module having lower write speeds than the 256 modules, which is usually the case with flash storage. But I think what you should really be aware of is the actual ProRes workflow. More specifically, getting the footage from your iPhone onto your computer. Normally you would use iCloud or AirDrop, but ProRes footage is likely going to be a few dozen times larger than the current HEVC footage, which means that you're better off using Lightning. But did you know that Apple still uses USB 2.0 speeds for Lightning at just about 25 megabytes per second, which means that to transfer a 10 gigabyte video file, it would take you almost 7 minutes. Now, the equivalent of ProRes for photos is ProRAW, which is still exclusive to the iPhone 13 Pros. So if you're the kind of person who edits their photos loads and you need the extra flexibility, then definitely do consider the Pro models over the non-Pro ones. Now, Apple has heavily promoted their new cinematic mode that not only gives you this super nice depth of field when recording video, but also allows you to automatically switch focus from one subject to another. However, it does come with its own limitations, such as the fact that you can only shoot in 1080p and only at 30 frames per second. Now, this is likely due to the massive processing power required to analyze 30 frames per second, but still, it's pretty much unusable for me. 1080p 30 in 2021, I'm sorry, but no. But the good news at least is that it also works with the front camera, not just the back. And you can even refocus as well as change the depth of field after you've taken the shot, as your iPhone will actually build an entire depth map. Okay, now Apple talked about how both the iPhone 13 and the 13 Pros have larger sensors than last year, with the Pro models having some pretty major improvements here. And if you look at Apple's website, they list all the changes in yellow, but did you guys know that some are actually downgrades? For example, even though the new telephoto gets 3x optical zoom from the previous 2x and 2.5x on the 12 Pro Max, it also gets a much smaller aperture, an f2.8 aperture compared to the f2.2 on the 12 Pro Max and f2.0 on the 12 Pro and 12. This means that when compared to the 12 Pro Max, the 13 Pro Max's telephoto now captures 21% less light, and the 13 Pro's telephoto now captures 28% less light. But of course, that Apple was aware of this, reason why they added night mode on the telephoto module. That's great for photos, however, when it comes to videos, the telephoto module will now be significantly worse in low light. Although, who actually takes telephoto videos in low light? I don't believe I've ever done that aside from testing. Speaking of the telephoto module, a lot of people think that you don't get any zoom on the non-Pro models. That's not actually true, as you still get digital zoom, it's just that you only get 5x digital zoom as opposed to 15x on the Pro models. But even that is still incomparable to something like the Galaxy S21 Ultra, which by the way has a 100x digital zoom. Okay, now Apple briefly mentioned how the displays on both the 13 and the 13 Pros are brighter than last year. The 13 can now reach 800 nits in sunlight as opposed to 625, while the 13 Pros can reach 1000 as opposed to 800. They can all reach 1200 nits in HDR, by the way, but some phones like the Galaxy S21 Ultra can reach 1500 nits in HDR. However, no phone can actually reach 1000 outdoors yet. The S21 Ultra can reach 900, and that's the brightest display on any phone now. So if Apple claims are correct, the 13 Pro will be the brightest phone for outdoor use. But yeah, we'll definitely be testing that to make sure that it's a correct claim. So definitely subscribe for the full in-depth review of the iPhone 13. Now, the iPhone 13s also support dual eSIM, which means that you can technically have up to 3 SIMs, one physical and then 2 virtual ones as eSIMs. Oh, and eSIMs also protect you from theft, as the phone will always be able to be tracked, as the SIM cannot be removed. However, 5G still has its own limitations, with the super fast millimeter wave 5G models still being restricted to US only. Oh, and did you guys know that if you get a millimeter wave 5G iPhone, it will also have this unique patch here, which is needed for the 5G antenna. Then the MagSafe wallet now supports Find My, so that you get notified if you leave your wallet behind, but the design hasn't changed. So the iPhone just remembers when the MagSafe wallet got disconnected, and it will alert you with the exact location of where that happened. Surely this means that the old MagSafe wallet will get this feature too, right? Well, some people from Mac Rumors have asked Apple about this, and it turns out that you will need to buy a separate wallet, because it has a new chip that detects when it got disconnected. So yeah, that sucks. I guess it's a magic wallet after all, since, it makes your money disappear. Speaking of making things disappear, your warranty will disappear if your iPhone gets water damaged. Now, you're all probably wondering, how can this happen, as all the iPhone 13s have full IP68 water resistance, up to 6 meters of depth, up to 30 minutes. And while that's true, water resistance can actually decrease if you submerge your phone in salt water or chlorinated pool water. And Apple cannot do any tests to check what liquid you actually submerged your iPhone into and at what depth it was actually in. Personally, I've never had an issue, and I've been submerging my iPhones since the iPhone 7. but I do know people who actually had issues. So if you want to be safe, either get AppleCare or any insurance that covers accidental damage, or just avoid submerging it in water altogether. Speaking of protecting your iPhone, there is a new AppleCare Plus in the UK and Australia, which just like in the US, it covers 2 incidents of loss or theft with a replacement fee of £109 for a new iPhone. That's actually not bad. Also, AppleCare Plus now covers a cracked back glass, with replacement backs costing just $29. Apple used to have the most expensive back glass replacements, but now I think they're actually the cheapest ones, assuming that you have AppleCare Plus, of course. And just like the iPhone 12 line, the 13s also have reverse wireless charging built in. Now, this is at the moment only used with the MagSafe battery, but it could be enabled in the future with the upcoming AirPods 3 and AirPods Pro 2. Of course, don't buy a phone on future promises, but this could be something that future Apple accessories could take advantage of. All iPhones are thicker now, from 7.4mm to 7.65. If that matters to you, you should also know that they're heavier as well, with the iPhone 13 Pro Max weighing in at 240 grams, which is 30 grams heavier than the 12 Pro Max, making it the heaviest iPhone ever. And in the UK, all iPhone 13s are cheaper. The 13 Pros are cheaper by £50, while the non-Pro models are cheaper by £20. Nice. Make sure to check out my thoughts on the iPhone 13 right here and all the main features, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zen of Tech, signing out. Cheers.